So, before I continue, or before we get into the discussion, I'll just offer respects to my spiritual teachers. Om Jnanativedandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him. Can somebody fill that glass of water? Fill that cup with water, please, and throw it on my face. No, I'm just joking. So I can wake up. No, I'm thirsty, so it's a little bit of a warmer day today. So tonight we'll start a new series of talks, and we'll be discussing in this book called Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Purana. There's a section where two people meet, and one person is describing what he learned from different gurus. Thank you. Thank you. Pour it on my head. Is it recording? It doesn't. I don't know. Anybody have any experience with this stuff? That's better in front? Is that better? What do you think? Is that better? Okay. I'm gonna look all around, but I mean, if it's better here, whatever. It's up to you two. He was trying to be, what do you call it? Sneak in? He was trying to sneak in and... Okay, so this section is from, or this section of this book, Bhagavat Purana. It's these two people, they're meeting, and one of them is describing to the other one what they've learned from 24 gurus. And so who are those 24 gurus? Specifically from nature. So I'll just read them, and we're going to discuss one of them tonight. So here you go, 24. Earth, air, so we're going to be discussing those. We're going to be discussing each guru at the lounge here every week. So earth, air, sky, water, fire, moon, sun, pigeon, python, the sea, moth, honeybee, elephant, honey thief, the deer, the fish, Pingala, the Kura, Pingala is a name of a particular woman, the Kura hawk, and the innocent child, the young girl, the arrow maker, serpent, the spider, and the wasp. So this particular person who, speaking to this other person, he said that I learned from these 24 gurus, and on the basis of learning from these 24 gurus, I have learned the science of the self, or self-realization. So tonight, the first one is earth. So what can we learn from the earth? So the earth is you could say, symbol of tolerance. And why is that? Who could have some, maybe there's some guesses why the earth is a symbol of tolerance? Everything's allowed? Okay. Good. Any other? Yes, always. Yes, always destroying. Yeah. Yeah, so that pretty much covers it. Pollution, drilling oil. Sometimes there's these savage wars in which bloodshed is all over the earth. Cutting down forests. It's a big one. Cutting down forests for commercial purposes. So this is what's going on. And sometimes people wonder, okay, well, why is this happening, right? Why is there so much pollution? Why is there so much this, so much that? And it all boils down to, say money, but most of it's digital nowadays, right? I guess money, looking at your bank account, looking at a person's bank account. So this is due to a lack of spiritual consciousness. A lack of spiritual consciousness. Just like, for example, depending on our consciousness, we see things differently. Like, if one person goes to the forest, they'll think, great, here's a forest. Let me cut all the trees down, right? And somehow they'll make some money, build some factories or whatever. Another person goes to the forest and they'll think, wow, what an amazing place to sleep. Let me sleep, right? I'm very tired. Let me sleep like a bear. Another person will go there and say, whoa, what a wonderful place. Let me meditate, right? Let me meditate. So I would say the first one that I mentioned is the worst. Sleeping's better in this case, and meditating's the best. So depending on our consciousness. So again, people are hurting the earth, and specifically, of course, you could say people in general are, but largely a lot of the mass scale destruction is coming from the man, what do you call man children, right? And women children, I guess. Usually you hear man children. You don't hear women children so much, but I'm going to say women children too. Women children and man children means people who are in the bodies of adults, but their consciousness hasn't matured much. And therefore they don't see, okay, I'm destroying the world. They think, oh, well, who cares? So what? As long as I increase my bank balance, it doesn't matter. So in this way, but the earth, despite all these people and everything that's going on, still very tolerant. And not just tolerating, but also giving. For example, the earth is giving so much in the form of all of our necessities, right? Plant some seeds, and of course water, sunlight, and what happens? I mean, provided a good farmer, what happens? Fruit, vegetables, right? Yeah. So in this way, the world is tolerant and also kind. Now another point's brought up of mountains. So mountains are, they teach us the principle of trying to, you could say, live for others, which is a hard concept, right? Living for others. To live for others. Maybe some of us know some of those people who are always thinking about doing good for others. Maybe they make us feel uncomfortable, right? And these guy's a little bit too positive, or girl's a little bit too positive, always trying to do something good. But it's an interesting concept to live for others. Recently somebody messaged me, text message, and They told me that I've lived 39 years for myself. And he said, now I want to live the rest for Krishna. I want to live the rest for spiritual advancement, for self-realization. And yeah, it's an interesting point because a lot of the times we don't think that by living for others, how that will make us happy. Like, how's that supposed to make me happy if I live for others? But actually it does. Because the more one is absorbed in themselves, the more difficult it is actually. Because if you notice, sometimes the mind, it has a tendency to just want anything, everything, and to hate anybody, everything, and to love, and on and on and on. And it's like an endless cycle, the mind's endless cycle. And sometimes you could say that, okay, well, hey, that's not so bad, right? To be operating under the control of our minds. But sometimes the mind just, what do you call it? What is that? Tyranny? The mind is just a bad master. So anyways, this is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita that we're the soul, we're the spirit soul, and we have a physical body, and we also have a subtle body, the mind. And sometimes our subtle body causes us more pain than our physical bodies do. Just like people, unfortunately, hundreds and thousands, and I don't know how many nowadays, but what I forgot this term. I just heard this recently, which I forgot. But it means somebody who just locks themselves in their room for a long time. Yeah, recluse. But a little bit more than a recluse in the sense that, maybe a recluse, but they just lock themselves in their room and surf the web, play video games, and have their parents, usually living with their parents because nobody else would tolerate that, right? They have their parents serve them, food on trays, and they're just living like that for years. And I know a number of people like that. And a lot of these people, they actually come to the point of, or at least some of the people, and if it's not some of those people, it's other people, they come to the point of, hey, maybe I should just end my life. I'm just suffering so much. Let me just end it. Nobody cares about it. Nobody loves me. It's interesting. Someone did this. I was reading. Somebody they were doing this exercise, and they were speaking with people who wanted to end their life, suicide. And one of the things they said was, what do you, why do you want to die? And the people, they said so many things. And this particular person who was performing this exercise, they said, okay, well, have you ever tried living for something? And the person said, no, I haven't actually. So then the person said, okay, you're talking about dying, but why not try living first? We have to try to live first. So in other words, there's many options out there. Like sometimes boys and girls get in relationships. Maybe not sometimes, all the time. Or, of course, there's people getting into same-sex relationships as well. But whatever the case, people are getting into relationships. Majority boy-girl relationships in the world. Or man-woman relationships. And sometimes people, as last week was being mentioned, there's a heartbreak, right? Means the person ghosts them or something like that. Very painful, right? Ghosted. They won't respond to the text or to the whatever messages. No response. You know the guy is still around, you know the girl's still around, but not for you. So it could be painful, right? It could be painful, it is painful. And Srimad Bhagavatam, this book that we're discussing, it also mentions that. A lot of pleasure, but also sometimes a lot of pain. So, anyways, so... yeah, why not try living? Thank you. So people think, oh, this is it. This is the end. This person left me. Okay, that I understand. To a degree, it's painful. Okay, I'm trying to be sympathetic and all that. But don't forget, there's another, whatever. That's one person. There's another. How many people are on the planet? It's half of the population, or however you want to do the math. But there's hundreds and thousands and millions out there. In other words, it's not a good reason to take one's life. Sometimes it happens. So, to live for others, it's an interesting thing to contemplate and to try to do. At one particular time, apparently, in history, in modern history. And if any of you know otherwise, you could inform me, or you could just believe what I'm saying. There was a time where you were able to, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a time where you're able that you weren't able to donate a kidney to someone unless, someone who needs it, unless you were connected to them, means biologically. But over time, they opened the doors. They said anybody could donate a kidney. Any healthy person can donate a kidney. And at a particular time, some people were thinking, oh, this is just weird. Doctors and other people think, this is weird. Why are people donating their kidneys to complete strangers? And the people who are doing it, they're very happy. Okay, great. I'm giving my kidney, right? So what does this have to do with anything? I don't know. Means that people they have a tendency to do good for others. That should be a tendency. So why not take it to a higher and higher and higher limits? So this is what the mountain's teaching us, that is giving so much. Living for others, for example, providing, maybe some of you are drinking mountain spring water. Anybody drinking mountain spring water here? I know some of you bought some mountain spring water, right? Some of the monks are buying mountain spring water too, so fine. So mountains are giving spring water, so on. So in this way, the mountain's teaching us to give. And without water, we're in big trouble. So what's the best way to give? What's the best thing to give? What's the best way to give? Well, the best thing and the best way to give is to become a, you could say, spiritual encyclopedia. In which, what does that mean? In which the knowledge is stored in our consciousness, like an encyclopedia. Those old things, those encyclopedias. Is stored in our consciousness, and that we're able to give that spiritual knowledge to others. And that could come in different forms. Giving them spiritual books, going on social media, posting spiritual stuff, right? Wisdom, so on. So this is a great way to give, because without knowledge, it's just a complete nightmare, actually. And what do I mean by that? Imagine no knowledge of architecture. Some of you maybe have went to Europe and seen some of the beautiful architecture, buildings, or India, or some places in America, or wherever in the world. There's beautiful architecture all over the world. And imagine a world without that. A bunch of gray buildings, like this room here. So it took a lot of work, actually. 1977, they started working on this room, all the artwork. Actually, we're still, they didn't finish, so there's a lot to do. They did some painting here. So imagine a world without architecture. Imagine a world without people knowing how to cook. I mean, when everybody wants to go on a vacation, or when they want to go out around town or something like that, so many times people think, oh, let's go to the Italian restaurant. Oh, let's go to the Indian restaurant. Oh, let's go to this restaurant, that restaurant. So imagine if no one knew how to cook. It's knowledge. It's a knowledge that they have knowledge how to cook. So how to beautiful architecture, cooking, speaking, right? Writing. I mean, anyone try to write a book here? It's takes a lot of time and energy. Editors, right? So all of this is bringing beauty to our life. These different forms of knowledge. Now, adding spiritual wisdom to that just shoots us off into space. Means into unlimited experience of happiness. So the best thing is to give spiritual knowledge, and to try to use whatever assets we have for that purpose. We shouldn't sit on our assets, right? Try to use the assets for a particular purpose. And also, so we're gonna what do you call wind up here, and then if there's any comments or questions, we could entertain those. So this principle of tolerance, how do we become tolerant? Tolerance actually requires some spiritual progress, spiritual advancement. But one great, Krishna come again in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's a long history, but there's many books about it. He teaches this particular verse, Trinadapi Sunuchena Toradapi Suhishnuna Amanida Manidena Kirtaniya Sadaharihi. So he says one should be as tolerant as a blade of grass, and as humble as a, humble as a tree. Tolerant as a blade of grass and humble as a tree. One should offer all respects to others and expect no respect in return. So actually this formula here, this is actually a formula for world peace. It's a formula for happiness. It's a formula for practically everything. It means everything good. So humble as a blade of grass, as tolerant as a tree, to offer all respects to others and expect no respect in return. And in such a state, one could chant Krishna's names constantly, like we're just doing. And this chanting of Krishna's names, it is the main process for elevation in this particular age. And it's also fun. Chanting here, very fun spiritually. And we also we chant on beads, very common in many spiritual traditions. Japamala, 108 beads. So every bead chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go to the next speed, 108 times, and that's one round. So strict practitioners, or practitioners, means monks in the temple, people living outside the temple. They chant 16 rounds. That's 16 times. This takes about 2 hours. So I've been doing that for 16 years now. And our Vijay Prabhu back here, another monk here to the right, he's been doing it, 48 years? 44, okay. Close. 44 years, every day. So there's definitely something there, because why else would I be chanting for 16 years every day? Why else would he be chanting for 44 years every day? So there's definitely something there, and what's there is happiness. It's a process for spiritual happiness, fulfillment, fulfilling the void, that gnawing void in our heart that may be there, filling that with spiritual sound, which produces spiritual happiness. All right, so that's a little bit about what we can learn from the earth, mountain, trees. And next week, or soon, depending on the next speaker, whether they want to continue with this series. But somebody will continue this series. Either I will or somebody else, Mukunda. But soon we'll hear about what we can learn from air, or wind. So, okay, does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, so
okay. When you do the 2 hours of chanting, is it just chanting for 2 hours, or do you do other things at the same time?
well, some people go 80 miles an hour in their car while they're chanting, on their beats.
I think that's what I would do.
Or 90. But the best thing to do is just to meditate, because the thing is, the whole world, it's like, I'm also living in the world, by the way, but the whole world, it's just, there's so much to do. It's just like such a, school and work and this and that, and just running around, and right, what to speak of whatever. There's so many things. So, but in order to make steady progress and therefore steady happiness, because we have to make steady progress and we could have steady happiness, right? The idea is to just meditate, just neglect everything else. Throw the phone out the window, throw the computer out the window, throw the iPad out the window, and just focus. You know what? We don't have to throw them out the window, but just turn them off, right? Or they have I think it's a kind of a new feature, right? They're always coming out with little new features for each phone, but maybe it's not new. I don't know. But when they say messages, or this person, if you try to text, this person's messages are silent, or whatever it says. So just to turn it off, to turn it down, and just to focus on meditation. That's the best way. Or else we get mixed results. We don't get pure results. And therefore you could say we get mixed happiness. So mixed meditation means mixed results, means mixed happiness. So the more we could just focus, the better. So that's the idea. And it's difficult. I understand that. I've tried to meditate. It's difficult. If anybody understands the difficulty of meditation, it's somebody who's tried to do it, for years. So it's difficult. And what's the difficulty? The difficulty is the mind, right? It's always going here and going there, and the thing is, it's every thought the mind makes us believe is really epic. It's this is really epic, and let me capture this, right? But it's interesting because if you just let that thought go and then you go to the next thought, that thought's also very epic. Yeah, so every thought's epic. I don't know. It's kind of, there's some. So the idea is that we shouldn't believe the mind's advertisements. There's all these advertisements going on. Oh yeah, what about this? What about that? It's all like rushing through the mind, right? But we just don't believe them and say, hey, okay, all right, buddy, I hear what you're saying, Just hold on a second, I'm meditating. And then just keep on doing that. And if we keep on meditating, our ability to focus becomes more and more and more intense and concentrated. And then we're just able to focus completely. So that's the idea.
Okay, I have a second question,
Okay.
but if it's too much of a rabbit hole, we don't have to go down it.
Okay.
Back to the beginning of your talk and talking about the earth being tolerant, which was a message that I appreciate a lot. But I was wondering where the concept of unmaking to make better comes into play. I mean, we're sitting in a really beautiful space, but obviously things had to be unmade in order for this space to be made.
Yes.
So it seems like it's not maybe necessarily the perfect thing to just only sit and do nothing. Or maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, we meditate, and then it's both. We're not running off to the Himalayas. We're not running off to the Himalayas. And we're also not just being reclusive. We're being reclusive, whatever. We're not just for ourselves, means running off to the Himalayas. I'm getting things backwards here. We're not running off to the Himalayas trying to hide out, right? We're here in San Diego, Pacific Beach. But the idea is also not to spend all the time and energy on others, to be quite frank. Means we need to spend time on ourselves, self-discovery, self-realization, self-improvement, self-actualization, whatever you want to say. And then once spending time on ourselves, so to speak, trying to find ourselves, then we go out and we try to help others or assist others or encourage others. So that's the idea. Yeah. But there's a saying, if you get a, what is it? You get a thorn in your hand when you're picking roses. You could get another thorn and then pick it out. So by the same thing that causes the pain, you could use it, the same thing and remove it. So similarly, ultimately, as monks, or as speaking from my perspective, as monks or as Bhakti practitioner, I may not agree with a lot of the stuff that's going on in modern civilization, but the idea is we could use certain technology or certain things to you could say help the situation. So, all right. Any other question or comment? Yes, Mr. Michael.
Thanks very much for your talk, Bal. I really enjoyed it. So I'm following up on when you spoke just now about the difference or comparing chanting while you're meditating or chanting while driving 90 miles an hour.
You've been doing that, huh?
What's that?
You've been doing that, huh?
I've heard it been done.
No, I mean, you've been doing it, right? No, I'm just joking. Okay,
possibly, yeah.
I'm just joking.
So obviously I've heard the phrase here, chanting with intention. So either way, meditating, driving 90 miles an hour, whatever else you're doing.
Yeah.
As long as you're chanting with intention. And again, maybe how would you explicitly define chanting with intention?
Okay. So, yeah, there's two things. You could sit in a room and chant, right? Meditate. Or you could chant and meditate while driving 80 miles an hour on the freeway. So, it's true. It's recommended, like on the beads. It could be a little dangerous, going 80 miles an hour chanting on your beads. But you could just chant without the beads. Just sing like we're singing or chant. But it's recommended that there should be a time in one's day where they just chant, like on the bead specifically. And the best is in the early morning. So, or if it's not early, the earliest, you know. So, and chanting with concentration means, like our spiritual teacher Srila Prabhupada one time said, he said, oh, because you're supposed to hear. That's the idea, because you're meditating on the sound. So he said, how do we do that? And he said, well, just like I am speaking and you were listening, so you do that. So I'm speaking, you're listening. So you do that. When you're chanting, you just listen. And that's, and try to work on perfecting that. In other words, become a good listener. So yeah, that's important. Have you ever been with someone who is just like a really good listener? Just like you're talking and they're just really focused and they're just like drinking and everything, they're just listening completely to you and like nothing else existed. It seems you're just talking, right? So that's the idea, to try to become like that with chanting. So, all right. Is there any last? All right. So last.
Thanks for the talk, Prabhu. So you talked about patience and tolerance, and I think patience and tolerance also has to be combined with righteousness, right? I mean, even
Combined with what?
righteousness. I
Ri-
mean, so it's not
okay.
like, so it's not like you should tolerate tyranny, or you have to like be patient with, because even with earth, I think you can only reap what you sow, kind of thing. Like so.
Yeah.
A little
Yeah, I mean, no one should. If you tolerate, people shouldn't tolerate. Tyranny, or therefore there's revolutions and stuff like that. But it means within reason, because a lot of the times we actually can tolerate and we can be patient, but we choose not to, or we're just not, right? It's not like, hey, you know, this person's mistreating me or this and that. It's like, well, maybe it's the other way around. You know, we're kind of giving them a hard time by not being patient and tolerant. So, but yeah, in the cases in which we do need to fight in different ways, we're not against that either. But it has to be a righteous fight, not a unrighteous one. So, all right. So I think our host here has some announcement, I think, regarding Saturday. So, all right, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
It's a nice round of applause for his